And we come to chapter 24, the last chapter in the book, and there'll be one more video because there's a conclusion as well. But chapter 24, New Testament reflection, away from Matthew and Luke's Christmas story, we mustn't miss John. And I've deliberately put John last. The prologue to John, which seems to skip Christmas, is actually full of it, full of the incarnation. And that's what we want to see. So let's just look at some highlights here. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. That light shines in the darkness. Sounds very Christmassy, doesn't it? That light shines in the darkness, and yet the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. And so we've got language of light and darkness. We've got an introduction of John the Baptist as a man, so not his birth, but it's all related. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and yet the world did not recognize him. And then verses 14 to 18, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. He pitched his tent among us. We observed his glory, the glory as the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, of course, verses 14 to 18 is a section that is it's explicitly explaining what was happening back in Exodus, where Moses was up on the mountain and asked to see the Lord's glory, and the Lord said, okay, but you can't see my face. And yet a few verses earlier in Exodus 33, verse 11, Moses was in the habit of going to the tent of meeting and meeting the Lord face to face. And so who was the Lord on the mountain and who was the Lord in the tent? Is it the same Lord? Because it seems the Lord in the tent gives him confidence to ask to see the glory of the Lord on the mountain. But there's a distinction between them. John 1 explains that. No one has ever seen God, the one up on the mountain, if you like. The one and only Son in this translation here, or the one and only God, who is himself God, is at the Father's side. He has made him known. Okay, I'm going to read the final section of the book just to bring us to conclusion here. A little bit longer than some of the other readings, but I didn't know how to cut it down particularly. So, no one has ever seen God. These are striking words. God the Father is invisible. That sounds profoundly disappointing. However, the only God who is at the Father's side, he has done something profoundly wonderful for us. Here come the 5 words that offer us the greatest privilege of all. He has made him known. Surely this is the right place to finish a book on the incarnation. As Jesus would put it in a later conversation, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. If only we could see God. If only we could know him. But we are mere humans. We are just creatures in a vast creation. There is no way that we can know him. There is no way, that is, unless he should choose to come to us and become one of us. And he did. The only God who is at the Father's side, he took on flesh and pitched his tent among us. He has let us all see his glory, which means we have been able to receive grace upon grace. The truly gracious trueness of God, his loyal, loving loyalty, it is ours in the Son. He is full of grace and truth. The Son has always been the communication of the Father toward us. But in the incarnation, there is a moment in time where he became flesh and pitched his tent among us, and he invites us into his word to meet with him face to face as a man meets with his friend. And as we come to him, the Son, we get to see the Father made known to us. The incarnation is an invitation to know the Father in the Son by the Spirit. At the center of the universe, there is a glory-giving, loving relationship, and in the incarnation, we are invited to join in. I hope that's been helpful as we've gone through this book and kind of worked through the logic of it, the Old Testament anticipations, Matthew's presentation, Luke's presentation, New Testament reflections. We can see that from cover to cover, the Bible tells us that God the Son has become one of us. He has become a human in order to rescue us, in order to reveal God to us, in order to not just be one of us, but to be one with us, to be inviting us into this glorious relationship of the Trinity himself. And we come to the end of the book. As I said, one more video, one more reflection as we come to the conclusion of the book. And if you're following this through in December, have a wonderful Christmas. And if you're watching this at any other time, celebrate Christmas now. It's not just a once a year thing, it's an all of life thing, because Jesus coming into the world has changed everything. Have a wonderful incarnation celebration, whatever day you're watching this. Thanks for watching.